Hello, my name is Paul Zarvis, and I'm here today with acclaimed American record producer and Berkeley College of Music professor, Prince Charles Alexander. He's a professor of music production and audio engineering. How are you doing today?
Great, Paul. Great. Thanks for doing this, and thanks for reaching out to me. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate you doing it as well. Believe me, we have to find someone that I couldn't think of anybody else. I've learned a lot from you through the semesters at Berkeley.
Excellent.
For those of you who don't know who Prince Charles is, most of you probably do at Berkeley, but for those of you who don't, I'm going to do a little background. Pardon me for having to read here, but there's a lot. You were born in Boston, and your first big commercial music project was Prince Charles and the City Beat Band, right? From Virgin Records.
That's correct.
And in the mid 1980s, you had a switch and you became a multi-platinum recording engineer, mixing engineer. Your clients included Mary J. Blige, Puff Daddy, Usher, Boyz II Men, Jodeci, X-Clan, Brandy, Babyface, Sting, Aretha Franklin. You mixed and recorded Notorious B.I.G.'s One More Chance at the Hit Factory. You have more than 40 platinum and gold certifications from the Recording Industry Association of America, and won a Grammy for Best Contemporary Soul Gospel Album in 2003. But that's not it. It says here also that you received 3 Grammy Awards, 7 nominations.
That's correct.
That's amazing, amazing, amazing career. And that's just, it blew me away when I read it.
Be careful what you wish for.
I can imagine. So growing up in Boston in the 60s and the 70s, what was it like? I mean,
Well, growing up in Boston in the 60s and 70s was really interesting for me as a musician. So I started playing clarinet when I was 11 years old at Boston Latin School, which is the first public high school in America. By the time I was 13, I was playing in bands and actually starting to make money. By the time I was 15, I think I hooked up with a consortium of musicians that would eventually, over time, yield my group, Maurice Starr as an artist. Maurice Starr would produce New Edition and go on later to produce New Kids on the Block. So the genesis of New Edition and New Kids on the Block comes from the people that were creating in Boston in the 70s. One of the things that was probably different from what's going on in Boston these days is that we had a hub. We had a central point where Black music met up. So, there were lots of clubs like the Rathskeller and a lot of rock and roll clubs in Boston for a while. We had a scene similar to like the grunge scene over in San Francisco. But we also had, a Black music scene, where not just our local bands, but even the groups like the Ohio Players, the Commodores, LTD, Parliament Funkadelic. I mean, the list just went on and on and on. And the club was called the Sugar Shack. If you say the Sugar Shack to anybody in Boston that's my age, you can see this big smile come over their faces. Wow. And I did not know that, Ohio Players wasn't the biggest group on the planet. You couldn't tell me that when I was 15. I didn't know that, the Commodores weren't the biggest group on the planet. So to me, these were the stars of my time. It's like if Beyonce was 6 feet away from you, wow. So these were the Beyoncés of our time. They were coming in to the Sugar Shack weekly. So now I'm 13, 14, 15 years old. I'm seeing these people. They're 6 feet away from me. I'm learning so much about music performance, about crowd interaction, about, staging and theatrics and all this kind of stuff. And eventually I went to college, and that whole Boston scene was still there. And I kept, going. I was only about half an hour away, but my grades did suffer the first semester. So I had to kind of pull back. But in the summers I went back, it was like a fish to water, went back to the scene. played at the Sugar Shack, played at local places, interacted with the musicians. Probably that's even more important. And by the time I graduated college, I made a choice to focus on a genre of music that I thought was the most popular at the time for Black audiences, and that was funk music. So I debuted as a Lyricon player, a wind synthesizer player, with a band called Prince Charles and the City Beat Band. And Maurice Starr, the guy that did New Edition and New Kids on the Block, helped me to put that together as the producer. And a former A&R executive, I think he was Atlantic, named Tony Rose, became my business partner for the next decade of my life.
Wow. Yeah. So that I had seen a video that you did, TEDx Youth at Beacon Street, how to a music producer in 3 easy steps. And that was really, really powerful to me when I was watching that. When you went through how, you know, your mother, your Shiro, all that. And it was quite a turbulent time, and that had a profound effect on you, according to your video. And when like when I had talked to you earlier, like I'm about the same age as you.
Right.
I saw the same things on TV that you saw, but I didn't see me in those pictures.
Right.
And I remember my mother taking me down the street by the hand in protest marches, you know, against those who opposed Civil Rights Act and all that. But for you, it seemed to have been a motivating factor to achieve. Like, as far as from watching that video, it pushed you to, like, you know, get through that period and overcome it.
Well, even my name, Prince Charles, speaks to the ambition of being successful, or the ambition of being respected. That's probably the word. The ambition of being respected is why I'm Prince Charles, because I chose that name. I chose that name when I was 21 years old. And I didn't want something that would make me old when I was older. So Prince is eternally youthful, even though I'm old as heck now. But you know, the civil rights era, we're talking, let me see, I was born in 58, so I was like 6.
I was 50.
You know, 6, 7, 8 years old. And there is a pathos in being a second-class citizen. And the pathos of being a second-class citizen in any country, I felt like without me excelling, the only other option was to fail.
I get it. I mean,
so there, but for the grace of God, when I saw somebody in jail or addicted to drugs or an alcoholic, I'm like, if I don't do something incredible, then that's the other option.
So music wasn't an escape from it. It was a calling. It was a mission.
It was a mission.
Yeah.
It was a mission. I mean, the mission was to be successfl. I don't care whether I was going to be a lawyer, a doctor, a politician, but music, you know, once I put that clarinet in my mouth and you know, the guy pointed to the page and said, that's B, and he put my finger, it was like, oh, this is easy. This is math. B, A, G, F, E. It was a real comfortable symmetry for me. And so I just thought to myself, well, if it's meant to be, it will be. I'll pursue it. And if it's meant to be, it will be. If it's not meant to be, then I will definitely make sure that I become a lawyer. So that was always plan B.
Yeah.
And then plan A actually worked out, and here I am.
Thank God for that. You had some success as a performer, right? With Prince Charles and the City Beats band.
Yeah.
But you saw something, you said hip hop threatened your work as a performer, if I'm paraphrasing. Mm-hmm. You made that switch to record producer. how did you know that? How did you see so far ahead? I mean, that's a big choice. Like, I've been performing for year after year after year after year, and I saw disco destroy my blues and rock, and all that. And it was like, but you saw past that. You saw something coming down the pike,
Yeah.
picked up on it.
So it begins with being in the bands when I was, 14, 15 years old. So what do you play? What you play are the hits of the day. So in order for me to go in the club, Roscoe's Lounge, the Sugar Shack, all these different places, I had to learn my horn parts. So we were learning the horn parts weekly of the records that were the most successful. And back then, we had 3 television stations and not too many radio stations. So it wasn't really difficult to find out which were the most successful records at any point in time. So learning in my horn parts, and then eventually studying other instruments like the piano and the guitar, and starting to learn those other parts, became a part of my DNA. How do you get to play an Ohio Players song or a Commodore song? You actually go to the song, you learn all the parts, because DJs hadn't made an impact in the club scene yet.
No.
If you owned a club, you hired a band. So somewhere around 1975, 76, 77, I remember being on the bandstand and we took our break. Now, normally we took a break and they'd play the jukebox. We took a break this time and there was a guy spinning records and everybody was on the dance floor. Yep. I was like, oh my God, this is different. Our band can practice like 10 songs, 15 songs throughout the week, and maybe we'll add 1 or 2. This guy can play hundreds of songs, and I was like, okay, everybody's on the dance floor. He's really entertaining them. We have a very limited repertoire. And honestly, we really don't sound like the Commodores.
He's got professionally mixed and mastered recordings.
Professionally mixed and mastered recordings. And here we are trying to compete with that. So that was already one salvo of a red flag right there. So the DJ. Now, I still thought that the DJs were DJs and musicians were musicians, so never the twain shall meet. So you can be the DJ all you want, but we play music. We give you heart and soul. Then I went to college and I decided to become the funk musician, and I put that record out and I started to travel the world. The very year that I put that funk record out is the year that Rapper's Delight came out. And I heard the guys talking on a track that had been released earlier called Good Times. They kind of did their own reworking of Good Times and they talked on it, and which we call rapping. And I was like, well, that's not musical. It's not interesting. So it's a fad. It's it'll go away and I can just keep doing my funk thing. So over the next 7 years, hip hop got stronger and stronger and stronger. And then I was in Berlin, and there was a hip hop contingent in Berlin by 1983. These kids who were speaking German, and they had their hats turned backwards and baggy clothes on and whatever. And I was thinking to myself, this is kind of the second salvo. Hip hop has not gone away. It has not been a fad. And then the third piece of it, I was on stage at Madison Square Garden, 30,000 people shouting and screaming my name. I had probably gone as far as I could go as the funk musician with my label, because they had just hired Jermaine. You don't have to take your clothes off. Jermaine, I forget Jermaine's last name. So they had just signed this artist. He had this slick hair and really, really pretty. He wasn't a hip hop artist, but it's like I could feel that the label was moving past me. That whatever it was that I was going to offer them by being this really outside, rebellious person, guess what? Hip hop was now the outside rebellious thing. And I wasn't able to service that outside rebellious component for the label. And so they put Jermaine, God, I'm spacing on Jermaine's last name. So once they signed him, I was like, ooh, the handwriting's on the wall. I'm not really sure if I'm going to have a record deal too much longer. And I started thinking, my gosh, what can I do? Do I, do like Cameo and, wear spandex for the next 20, 30 years of my life and operate as a nostalgia group?
Yeah.
because I knew that new records weren't going to be received as well as some of these cool hip hop records.
Yeah.
And I had done a few raps in my music making, but it wasn't the authentic, I come from the hood type of a rap. So I couldn't figure out what to do, and then I was looking at I think it was the Village Voice, and I saw an advertisement for a school that was teaching audio engineering, and I thought, oh, what a great way to be in the studio all the time, to be an audio engineer. It'll help my ability to produce. Right. I went to that school, I got certified, I started engineering in some of the local studios in New York, and it helped me grow exponentially as a music producer. It was the best thing that I could do. And that was the beginning of the second phase of my career.
Wow. You have an amazing gift of knowing the math that is required for understanding what a lot of the things, a lot of the plugins, I always, from taking your courses, you go to math and turn it into music, like turn it into delays or echoes, and 60,000 times but you had that gift, so it may have made a lot of sense to you, maybe, as producing, that it came maybe easier.
Well, mathematically, fed into dollars and cents. It's like, you've been traveling around the world. Everybody knows your name, but you can't pay your bills.
Wow. So, Berkeley, what do you love? First of all, I guess, why Berkeley? But more importantly, what do you love most about teaching at Berkeley?
So, when I was, after about 17 years of being a successful producer engineer in the real world, now, obviously, our industry was changing, because I began in '86 as an engineer. And so that gives you 14 years to the turn of the century. Pro Tools really, really kicks in about 2001. So from 2001 to about 2004, I was feeling the shift, downloading, streaming was in its infancy. Once again, I'm looking and saying to myself, okay, I'm paying $6,000 a month to have a studio in the middle of Manhattan, but I need to be making about $20,000 a month in order for that to make sense. And that 20,000 was shrinking to 15, to 12, to 9, to 6, and it started to become less and less efficient for me to have a space. So I closed the space down, went in the box, and now I'm servicing people that used to have projects on big consoles are now calling me only to mix, because they used to call me to track it,
right,
edit it, and then mix it on the big console. Now it's like I'm only getting mix work. So what's happening is this interaction with the client from the tracking phase is starting to go away from me. So for me to build new clients, I can only build new clients via mixing. Whereas before, I was able to build new clients by getting in there with them, helping them record, so forth and so on. So and I had a high profile at this point. So the only way for me to survive was to go from high profile client to high profile client. And then I started to find out that they were very siloed, very kind of clannish. Like, if you work with Puffy, you can't work with Dr. Dre. If you work with Dr. Dre, you can't work with I'm trying to think of somebody at that time, with Nelly or something like that. So I was like, whoa, this is kind of weird. And yeah, so and there really isn't a competition, but that's how they were perceiving it. And I'm like, okay, if that's what it is, if that's what I have to deal with, then that means I have to keep reinventing myself every few weeks. I got to keep making phone calls. And I remember I made a phone call to one A&R person. The A&R person must have been about 25 years old. And about this time, I'm about 47, 48. And when I made the phone call, I felt like, one, the person had really not heard of me. Two, didn't know my connection to music that had been successful. And three, I felt like I had to prove myself to this person that I was a mixing engineer of repute that they actually wanted to use. And I started thinking to myself, so I'm going to literally have to do this every couple of weeks
They had no idea.
to prove myself every few weeks. I was like, there's got to be something better. So I started looking at sports and, like, what do the old ball players, the old football players, the old basketball players, what do they do when they get to be, 35, 40, 45? And, I saw that they had connections to universities. I saw that Branford had a connection. Branford Marcellus, the saxophone player, Wynton's brother, had a connection to a university. I saw that Wynton was connected. I saw that Donald Byrd was over, at a university. So I started to look at sports, but then it went into music, and I started to see that a lot of the jazz musicians had these university connections. So I started to think, well, I'm a music producer and an engineer at this point. I'm still a musician, but I'm a producer and an engineer. Where would that work well at? At this point, there were a few programs around. There was a program at CCNY, City College of New York. There was a program at NYU called the Clive Davis Department of Music, which is not a Clive Davis Institute of Music. There was a program, a fledgling program at Fordham. They were starting to pop up. So I sent my resume out. Crickets. Nobody bit. Nothing. I was like, a Grammy-winning engineer, da, 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 da. Nothing. 18 months later, and I'm ready to now like hunker down and make the phone call to the 25-year-old A&R people and say, hey, I can mix your record. I'm ready to do that. And 18 months into that, just when I'm like ready to pick up that phone, Jason, oh God, I'm spacing my last name. It's horrible being old. but Jason from NYU called me up. He's actually the chair now. And he wasn't the chair then, but he called me up and he interviewed me at NYU, and I started at NYU. While I was at NYU, I got a call from Berkeley that a friend of mine, Carl Beatty, was being kicked up to admin and that his position was open. And it was a full-time position. I was an adjunct at NYU. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm from Boston. My mom's in Boston. She's getting older. I thought that would be kind of a cute idea for me to go back to Boston. So I went and interviewed for, SSL console. I made the SSL console dance. I don't know how many people I competed against, but it was hands down very easy transition for me. And then once I started, it's like I did my best to help Berkeley transform into the place that I wanted to be at. And not all places will allow you to do that. I was having a little bit of pushback at NYU trying to do that. And at Berkeley, I basically over time, I would say, can I do this? They said, yeah. Can I do this? They said, yeah. Well, can I do this and this and that? They were like, yeah. Berkeley, I was like, wow.
They let you create.
Yeah. So I created a whole curriculum called the Commercial Record Production Curriculum. And basically, I feel like the things that I did best as a musician, as a producer, as an engineer throughout the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s is reflected in much of that curriculum, even as we moved into the 21st century with new DAWs, new plugins, but a lot of the theory of it is still the same, not just the theory of how to make the music, but the theory of how to even make the connections with audiences with the music and make the connections with garnering revenue. Things look a little bit different, but at the core of it, a lot of it is still the same. Mm-hmm. So Berkeley was the place, and Berkeley is the #1 music school in the country. We've got 4,000 musicians. So anytime you're like, hey, I need somebody to sing on a project, play a guitar, play tuba on a project, we've got access to that. So what better place to be at than Berkeley?
It's a beautiful school.
Yeah.
I read an article that you did on vocal production with Izotope. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if you can talk about it or not, but are you involved or consulting in design of new plugins coming down the line with them?
I'm not officially, but my desk mate, the person who has the desk over from me, is Jonathan Weiner, who's the president of he was a serving president of AES. He's also an employee at Izotope, as well as being a professor at Berkeley College of Music. And he and I are always talking. He's invited me over. I've chatted with the design team. I think the Nectar plugin or whatever the plugin is, it has the little mixing thing where you can change things around and move them.
Uh-huh.
Some of that was an idea that I discussed with the design team about what we as mixers are looking for in the plugins. So nothing really official, but I think that Izotope's ability to go into audio and solve some of the more problematic things about audio is really at the top of the list. And maybe one day I might need to get a job at Izotope, so we'll keep those options open.
They're Ozone 9, and there's an EQ called Neutron that is
Neutron's fabulous.
chart. Yeah, but I thought that when I saw the article on vocal production, and remember in your vocal production class, I'm like, he could probably design programs that could just patch, oh, you want Lady Gaga's vocal from here,
Right. We
number one.
we have a few things that we've discussed that, COVID came and really changed the dynamic of a lot of relationships. So thanks for reminding me. So we'll get back to that. that's definitely something to pursue.
You still perform? Or?
Not so much. I've done some things for church. I've done some like flute pieces for church.
Right. I love playing gospel and worship music.
Yeah, I think 5 years ago I did a reunion thing with Prince Charles and City Beat Band. But the whole time I was doing the funk thing, I had a little jazz ensemble also. So I've done a few jazz things around town, but not so much these days. Do I miss it? Not really.
It's hard work grabbing your stuff and dragging it around.
It's hard work and it's stressful. And I look at my face. I look at some of the videos when I was younger, because I used to wear glasses a lot. I wore dark glasses because it's hard to tell now, but I was a bit shy and I didn't necessarily want to interact with my audiences, that much. So I would wear the dark glasses so I could only see like the first 2 rows of people. A lot of people don't know that I did that. I remember one performance, I took my glasses off and it kind of freaked me out.
I did the same thing. I used to put dark glasses on. I would look at people, but I wouldn't have to make eye contact. I could focus.
So I don't know. Performing doesn't give me the rush for performing's sake. For me, performing gives me a rush when it leads to more accomplishment and more accomplishment and more accomplishment. I'm just wired that way.
Yeah.
Like to go play in a restaurant for the beauty of, the flute and the saxophone and the wind synthesizer.
Right.
I mean, if I felt like I needed to do that, I would probably do it. I just don't. I feel like when I mix somebody's record and then their record shows up on the Hot 100, to me, that's as exhilarating as what I used to feel when I was a kid on the bandstand. So they're kind of, it's the same feeling, but it's a different part of my musical discipline is what I exercise these days.
Right. So in today's world of music on Instagram and TikTok and streaming, I mean, there's only one more question after this, but what do you look for in an artist that tells you this is someone you'd like to produce or record with? Because a matter of fact, I'm going to make it a 2-part question. Like, what does the future look like for the industry? The absence of the physical record and social media streaming have taken over. Like, you got to get likes or shares or, subscribers, as opposed to somebody going out and buying a record. Who's the kind of person that you'd look for that you would think that one's going to make it in the way the industry is today? And where is it going? I mean,
and this goes to what I was saying before. I don't think the industry has really changed. The 2 parts of the industry that haven't changed are I create content, and at the other end, I receive content. Yeah. Those 2 things haven't changed. All the stuff in the middle has changed, right?
Medium, yeah.
Right, the medium, the way it's delivered, all of this kind of stuff has changed. But the idea that you have either an excellent performance
Mhm.
or an interesting performance or an excellent story or an interesting story. There's some level of excellence on the thing that's created, and some level of interest for the people that are receiving it is really what this is always all about. Always. And everybody should remember that. So when I listen to Doja Cat, is Doja Cat interesting? Yes, she is. Is she profane and pornographic? Yeah, she's that too. But even if without all of that, she is interesting, and it sounds really, really good. So
Keep coming back.
People keep coming back.
So that
if you're doing blues, you've got to. When I go see your blues, you got to make me feel like I'm in the swamp. If you can do that, then I will come and pay to see your blues. You know, you make the blues record. You better put some of that swamp in that blues record, because if the swamp's in that blues record, I might check it out. Look at Brittany Howard. I mean, Brittany Howard's killing them. Everybody loves Brittany Howard from Alabama Shakes. Okay. They love her voice. She's bringing a certain kind of a pain that people want, you know, in their music. So optimistically, I feel like. And the word good is, for me, the word good has a wide spectrum. When I say good, I don't mean anything other than the ability to deliver an experience that elevates the listener from their normal experience, right? So that's what I mean when I say good. You could be a rapper that neither you nor I understand, but if they elevate their audience, to me, they're good.
Good.
You know,
there's excellence. And then it's that, you know, there's the Jacob Colliers and the people that are just off the chart musically, that it's like, wow.
Yeah. And Jacob Collier being off the chart musically, that doesn't mean anything if it can't translate. And I think that Quincy has helped him translate it. So that's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, you know, I've been on the street corner where there've been like 15-year-old kids that are playing Tchaikovsky. And I'm like riveted looking at the kid playing Tchaikovsky, and everybody's just walking by like hum, oh hum, and I'm like
on their phone.
Yeah, it's so being excellent. It's okay.
Yeah.
But excellent needs to, at some point, if you want to survive in this industry, excellence needs to be packaged. And if that packaging includes TikTok, if it includes YouTube, if it includes Facebook, if it includes some other kind of branding, then the artist must be aware of that and find their comfort level of interacting with those tools that could potentially help them brand their excellence and brand their connectivity to audiences.
Yeah, my life right now is dedicated to finding singers and or you know that I really think have it, and trying to mix them, you know, get to mix and get some music out there, and that have never been in the studio, but you just you hear the voice, you know they've got it, and you know. So
well, the thing for me is I've heard so many great voices that the voice is not enough for me. I need to see the will to want to connect. That's the thing that I'm looking for when you ask me the question, what do I look for? The will and the desire to connect. There are people who have mediocre talent that have so much of the will to connect that they're the ones that move to the front of the line.
You're absolutely right.
You know?
Yes, you're right.
And I look more for that than anything else, because ultimately, if I get involved with an artist and that artist can move to the front of the line, then that pulls me to the front of the line. Yeah. And if I get involved with somebody who's got phenomenal talent, but they're not really pushing themselves, then for me, I've just wasted 6 months or a year of my life. And I don't, you know, come on. At our age, we don't have that much time to be wasting.
If life is this long, I'm about here. So,
right.
Got to make each step count.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this today. I appreciate it. You know, I learned a lot from your classes, a ton. And I go back to them all the time, because it's not like it's right there and ready. But I got a bunch of sticky notes about that high that I still use all the time.
Cool. Very cool.
I think I can speak for the music world. Thank God your Shiro gave you the clarinet.
Yeah. Yeah, my mom, everything is due to her. She actually opened up all the doors.
Yeah.
And I don't know, did you know that I wrote a book, Paul?
No, I did not. What is?
So I wrote a book. It's called Hip Hop Production Inside the Beats. It
Wow.
is available on Amazon as a Kindle or as a paperback.
I wish I'd known that. I would have put it up on. Well, we can put
Oh
it.
no, yeah, not a problem. And uh, get a copy and send it to me so I can autograph it for you, man.
Absolutely, I will.
All right.
All right. Hey, thank you so much. It was great seeing you.
Paul,
Hopefully,
great seeing you. And by the way, you have a great voice.
thank you.
If there's anybody that should pursue singing and pursue documenting their talent, you are definitely on my list. So please do that, and don't be deterred. Just the more you do, the more music that you make, the more you have available, or the more opportunities that you open up for yourself. So keep doing it.
Thanks. My wife keeps telling me that you're always trying to produce other people. Why aren't you producing yourself?
Nah, man, you're a beast. I love your voice. Every time you sung something for me in class, I was like, well, what can I teach you? I can't teach you anything. I can give you some rules and some guidelines, but you've got a gift, and now it's about just really, really sticking to it and making sure that you document,
Yeah,
which means produce records, produce records, produce records, produce records.
that's it. I read about the Beatles. They'd get together 5 days a week, write songs, and throw them out all day long. And
Yeah.
they would write 10 songs a day, Lennon
Yeah.
and and some, it's you got to write the song. You got to keep making music.
Exactly. The more you do it, the better it gets. It's like anything in life. The more you practice some physical process, the more focused, the more agile you get with that process.
Right.
Music production, songwriting, they're similar to me. And most of the people that I know that are successful have a lot of sports analogies
Oh,
to
yeah.
to how they've become successful.
Well, thank you so much, Prince Charles Alexander from Berkeley, Berkeley's own. And thank you very much for listening. That's Hip Hop Production Inside the Beats by Prince Charles Alexander, available on Amazon.